Welcome into NFL Bad Beats from Week 14. I'm Tim Kalinowski, joined by Nick Giffen. We're talking, not just the classic bad beat, but it's more of a hidden bad beat. When you look at win probability, it often gets unnoticed when you're looking back at these games, handicapping future games. Usually what spits out is some lucky teams and some unlucky teams, and we know that regression is due for both sides of that. Nick Giffen, you're the one who's smart enough to explain this whole thing to me. We'll start with our first bad beat. It's the Falcons and the Buccaneers. Tampa Bay wins this one, but actually you say that Atlanta should have won this game. I think I've seen this movie before the last time these two teams played. Let me guess, Nick, we're going to have some woes in the red zone.
We certainly will. It seems to be the MO for the Atlanta Falcons. As you mentioned, they lost 29-25, but the expected score 28-17 for Atlanta kind of surprised me a little bit, especially given some of the underlying stats. But hey, it's what the numbers say is a win probability swing of over 36%.
Well, let's roll the film because it's kind of, what we're used to with this Falcons team at this point. Guess what? First drive of the game, they actually have a chance to put up 7. But that's not how it's going to go. And that's unlucky, Nick.
Yeah, second and goal from the 5. Obviously, you're hoping to get more than just a field goal, and can't even run it in the end zone. The guy has the edge and just can't even run it in. What are we even doing here? Which means third and goal from the 2. And again, nothing there. Instead of going for it on fourth down, they decide to cowardly kick the field goal here and just take the 3 points when they had, something like a little over 5 points expected at certain points in that drive.
Yeah. So really what happens with the luck gap there, Nick, is you're expected to get, almost a full 7 there. Instead, you come away with 3. I know it's not as simple as 7 minus 3, but it's about that, right? It's kind of how we get there.
Close enough. Yeah. It's a little in that 2+ range, because it was something like 7 versus 5.5, let's say, versus 3. So it's like 2.5 points, but yeah, in that neighborhood. So just already the Atlanta Falcons doing Atlanta Falcons things. I keep saying it's unlucky because it is. They should be converting these, even given how they frequently do this. A team with their success rates and their explosive rate percentages versus a defense like Tampa Bay's, they should be scoring these more frequently. It just somehow hasn't worked out a lot this year, which is why they're in the bottom 4 or 5 of our luck rankings overall for the season.
Yeah. And listen, when you talk about 2.5, it's like, oh, it's not that much, but it adds up and it adds up, especially when you have a chance for a full real 3 here. Yeah. And Younghoe Koo, who's, think of him as one of the most reliable kickers in the game. Not so much.
Yeah. The unreliability here, he doinks it off the right upright. And, these were pretty long. I'm not saying, it's terrible, but when you have a missed field goal from 40 plus 50 yards, somewhere in that neighborhood, you're still expected to make it a certain percentage of the time. And we'll see. This isn't the only one that he ends up missing. So even if he's only supposed to make that 50% of the time, that's 1.5 points off the board right there that they could have had on average.
Yeah. And, you say it adds up, and obviously nonsense here that could adds up as well. We get a safety. I had this on the Sunday ticket, and I couldn't believe it when I saw it. I said, how did that happen? I didn't think it was going to be I didn't think that there was really safety risk on that.
Yeah, exactly. We're looking at it here. It's at the 8-yard line. You're not expecting a safety from the 8, and it's just a really deep drop back, and then he hesitates on his throw and just has it stripped, and just your safety from there is so low probability that those 2 points that Tampa Bay got are pretty much 2 points over expectation there for them.
Yes. So I'll ask you, is it a certain calculation of how legitimate is the safety? And when you're on the 8-yard line, is it, does it get longer and longer as you move away from the goal line? It seems
simple,
simple,
absolutely. It's like the opposite of field goal distance, right? Like if you're kicking a 25-yard field goal or something, you're expected to make that a ton of the time versus a 50-yarder, and it kind of slopes down like that. It's like almost the opposite for a safety, right? If you're in the 1 or 2 yard line, still not a great chance of a safety, but certainly a higher probability than if you're out 8 yards, 10, 12, etc., it decreases very quickly.
Yeah, well, it was a hell of a first half for the Falcons here as they try and close it out with they could have a lead going into the half after all of that. Younghoe Koo, I know it's another long one, but here you go. I mean, this is why it adds up, Nick.
Yeah, second one here missed for Koo, and obviously when we have 2 field goals now that we're talking that are missed, we're talking at least 3 expected points off the board here for the Atlanta Falcons. So it all adds up, you know, a little more than 3 expected points missed from field goals, maybe let's say 4. You got about 2.5 missed from that other drive, and then just a couple other little bounces here and there. So Atlanta coming in under their expectation, and Tampa Bay coming in well over their expectation. We didn't really touch on Tampa Bay, right? They had 29 points. Their expected score was only 17. And the reason is Tampa Bay had 6 3-and-outs. Their drives were basically boom or bust, right? They either like scored or they punted. And they were gifted a field position. We didn't even talk about this, from a Ritter interception where they scored a touchdown on. You know, if we kind of average their drives, either punts or touchdowns or field goals, really the average should be more like if we interspersed them, maybe a couple of their successful drives came on those 3-and-outs, but then stalled out. We're talking around 17 points. So there wasn't any one specific thing that made Tampa Bay, I guess, other than the safety, come in 10, 12 points above expectation. It's just the way the drives worked out. It literally came in on the 2 extreme ends rather than in that middle ground.
Yeah, and I would say too, if you're kind of rolling your eyes or saying, "Hey, I don't believe it. Desmond Ritter, he kind of sucks." Like I'm shocked that Atlanta, puked on themselves a little bit. But listen, when the spread in the game is 2 points or less than a field goal, all this stuff matters and it adds up to the result of the game.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And one more final thing. Atlanta had 6.3 yards per play. Tampa Bay had 4.3. That's 2 extra yards per play Atlanta was getting. Normally, that team would win pretty comfortably, but they end up losing. So, yeah, just goes to show little things can add up here and there.
Yeah, exactly. Especially when we're talking about, what looked almost like a coin flip game, and that's what you get. So I'll go to our second bad beat here, Nick, the Steelers and the Patriots. All of a sudden, offensive fireworks that no one was expecting, but you were on the over in this game. It was a luck over, right? It wasn't just,
it was a luck matchup. It was a luck over.
Yeah.
It was a luck everything. And all the luck trends hit, right? The Patriots covered, the over hit in the first half, all over this one. So very excited about that. This is the second week in a row the Steelers end up in the bottom 2, in terms of luck. So second worst beat this week, worst beat last week. So remember when everybody was like, Mike Tomlin, Steelers are the top of the luck rankings every year. It's got to be just because they're so good. They've lost 3 of the last 4, and they're just tumbling down the luck rankings at this point. Still number 2, technically, but their luck percentage has been more than cut in half at this point.
And look, if it's not a victory lap over the luck rankings, at the very least, it's validity that there's something to this whole regression of luck versus, unlucky. So New England wins this game 21-18. But Nick, shockingly, the Pittsburgh Steelers, you tell me they should have won the game 19-13. They got unlucky, and it starts with Mitchell Trubisky.
Yeah, Mitch Trubisky, Kenny Pickett, both kind of just meh quarterbacks, but Trubisky throwing a duck there kind of as he's getting hit. Patriots pick it off, and it only takes them, I believe, 2 plays to turn it into a touchdown. I think we'll see it here. First handoff to Ezekiel Elliott, and then he gets a reception for a touchdown. So New England absolutely capitalizing on the luck they were given there. And that's something, the Atlanta Falcons failed to do. But Atlanta's offense is better than New England's offense. Let's be real, right? This is what Atlanta should be doing. And the Patriots are the ones that actually did this. So that's part of why the Steelers getting a little unlucky here.
Yeah, and when you look as inept as the Patriots offense has looked, this is out of character for this Patriots team. Bailey Zappi, I love him to death, but he ain't Joe Montana. And the Patriots did some real uncharacteristic 2023 Patriot things, including hitting some big plays, which they don't do, Nick.
Yeah, they haven't tended to do that. I will say Bailey Zappi has been more inclined to push the ball down the field than his predecessor, Mac Jones, his almost twin Mac Jones in terms of how they look, right? But yeah, he's definitely been more inclined to push the ball down the field. But even that said, back-to-back plays totaling 52 yards into a touchdown, especially with that first one coming on 3rd and 3, right? If they don't gain 3 yards there, all of a sudden it's 4th down. They may end up punting because they started in their own territory. At that point, the first play to Juju Smith-Schuster, which was 28 yards on 3rd and 3, the expected points from that drive was just 1.6. So to come away with 7 points from that drive, certainly over expectation. Now, the second play, Henry's 24-yard touchdown, the expected points from that situation was 4.2. So not as much, but we can't just say that was the only play in terms of the drive. And the average expectation of that drive was a whole lot lower, not just looking at the maximum expectation. So certainly the Patriots come in well over expectation on that drive. And honestly, that was it in these lower scoring games. And I know this went over, but it only went over 30 or 30 and a half. In these lower scoring games, it doesn't take as much to swing things. Yeah. We're talking about 2 major sequences here, the interception and the touchdown, and 2 big plays. But sometimes that's all it takes in these lower scoring games to swing the win probability a large amount.
Yeah, the Patriots, hitting 2 explosives of 20 plus yards through the air in that sequence. And feels like the Patriots should hang a banner after doing that with the way that they've played this year. In all seriousness, you told me that, they exceeded the expectations in terms of points on the Juju Smith-Schuster drive, especially. But is this just a grade against the expectation, or also a grade against, look, the Patriots, this is not who they have been. This is exceeding expectations. This is lucky.
A little bit of both. Honestly, we've seen them have the ability to be good at certain points this year. And we go all the way back to week 1, of course, against Philadelphia Eagles. They were expected score winner there in that one against the Eagles, even though they lost 25-20. So they have flashes of being able to do this. They just have not consistently been able to do this. In fact, very inconsistently been able to push the ball down the field. So maybe Bailey Zappi was the change they needed.
Yeah, apparently so. I love Zappi. As a Patriots fan, it's been hard to watch this year. So another team that's been hard to watch is the San Diego-based LA Chargers. They played the Broncos. Denver wins this game 24-7, but usually Denver still should have won this game, but it's been a deceiving result. The Chargers should have came away with more points, right?
Yeah, no, Denver definitely came in right where they were, 24 points versus 24 expected. But the Chargers actually had 19 expected points versus the 7 they got, which made the win probability swing almost 30%, just a tick below 30%.
Yeah, so we'll roll the exciting footage here. The Chargers fans look away. It's been much of the same story all season long. Not to mention the tough news with Herbert. And again, it's just kind of this feeling of they come away with nothing here after an interception. It's like you're knocking on the door. How does that happen? But at the very least, right? I mean, that's unlucky. We expect more than what they came away with.
Yeah, well, I mean, look who came away with more than them in this exact same situation. The Patriots we just talked about, right? They get an interception pretty much in this exact same spot on the field. And Ezekiel Elliott scores 2 plays later. Well, what do the Chargers do? They lose yards on 1st down. They have a nice 2nd down play. They make it 3rd and short. 3rd and short, they don't convert. And then 4th down, they rightly go for it and end up not converting as well. So just one of those things where it didn't work out here for the Chargers, even though they probably were expected to come away with that minimum a field goal, if not a touchdown. So it's just one of those spots where they didn't do what the Patriots even did against Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and then too, we have another 4th and 2. Here we go. The Chargers, they go for it. They're right in going for it. A lot of the times, despite a lot of the criticism. The problem is, I mean, for me, it's like the play call. Like, why do we have to do that? Like, I know it's unlucky because it should be about 50% of the time you convert there. But why is it just this adding all up here?
Yeah, exactly. It's the right decision to go for it. You got a 4th and 3, you got a 4th and 2. Both of those are less than 50%, but not like massively less than 50%. You're expecting to convert at least one of those, and the Chargers don't. So again, just a spot where below expectation. If they run a play from those spots, 10,000 times over, they're certainly going to hit at least one of them more than half the time. And just so happens this was the time they didn't.
I mentioned the poor play call, and we see this oftentimes on these 4th and shorts. Like these teams go for some, deep fade to the corner or to the sideline. You're like, well, was that really the high percentage throw there on a 4th and short? Have you considered? I know you don't, because it's you crunch the numbers. Have you considered going in and doing a human element of, hey, just bonehead 4th down call?
No, because here's the thing. If you only just pound it up the middle 100% of the time, game theory dictates, well, the defense would just play that 100% of the time. So you have to mix in a water or some of these other plays, I should say. So, it's just one of those things. I had to get a little shout out there to our guys on Happy Hour. But no, you do have to mix in some other things because you got to keep the defenses, honest. Maybe some of these teams do these ridiculous play calls more than expected, which isn't ideal, but by and large, it's just one of those things where we can't really account for the human element of it. I guess we could through like play tracking data if we really wanted to get super granular about it, but I don't think it's necessary because over a large enough sample size, it's going to aggregate out anyway.
Yeah. Okay. Good point. I would like to dock, teams for dumb.
It's like poker, right? It's like poker, right? Like if you just never bluff, then the opponent knows if you're betting, you have it, right? So they can just fold 100% of the time. It's the same thing here. If you just always pound it up the middle, the opponent knows that, and they'll limit your success on that. So you got to mix in a couple of those other plays, like I said.
That's a very good point too. And and sometimes you get burned bluffing and you're like, I'm never going to do that again. And like that's the wrong way.
Sometimes you get burned betting against the Steelers. You're like, I'm never going to do that again. But then you do, and you finally win thanks to the luck rankings.
Exactly. So this is one of those ones you look back, it's like, hey, the Chargers, it shouldn't have been that ugly. I know they have no Herbert, but next week they're 3-point dogs against Las Vegas at Las Vegas. So, again, it's keeping these things in mind as you're going forward. Is that enough baked in with no Herbert? Is that enough baked in with, hey, could the public have seen, or a lot of people have seen their eyeballs, just the final score and not necessarily that there were some elements in here that got us to that a bit of a deceiving result?
Yeah, and one final note on this one. If we look at success rates, Denver just over 39%, Chargers just over 37%. It's pretty close. If we look at yards per play, Denver 4.9, Chargers 4.2. It's pretty close. So this really wasn't a 24-7 game. This really was more like a small Denver win.
Fair enough. Nick Giffen, the guy with the courage to take the Patriots-Steelers over last week and convinced me to do so. Well done. Tip my cap. I was wrong. You convinced me. You're a good sport as always. We look forward to talking to you next week for NFL Week 15 bad beats. Hopefully you're not caught up in any of them.